by the president and the rest of the senior team. But essentially, the way I've advised him all along will continue. It's both an honor and it's frankly very humbling. The gravity and the responsibility of the job of President of the United States is obviously possessed by Donald Trump. You see him in this transition, how energetic, how focused, how brilliant his cabinet picks have been. And I really think that implicit in being with Donald Trump throughout that campaign, especially in those closing months and through the victory, is that those of us who could serve would go inside with him and continue that service on behalf of him and Vice President-elect Pence. I also, my main struggle was about my 4 children, Eric, whom you've met, and frankly, I feel very secure and very confident that President Trump's White House and indeed his West Wing will be a family-friendly place. I've seen him up close and personal with his own family, with his 10-year-old son, with his wife, with his adult children and their spouses. This is a man who values family, who's been great to the people who've worked from the Trump Corporation over a number of decades, whether they're observing Shabbos on Friday night and leave early, or whether they are women who have small children, and men who have small children, frankly, or sick elderly relatives. So that's been his practice. I know he'll take it into the West Wing, and this is a series of conversations I've had with him directly, and we came to terms, and I'm all too happy to serve him in this capacity.
Very good, very good. Kellyanne, you're going to be the senior most female in the White House. Can you give us a sense of the gravity of that?
Well, first, I would exclude from that description any of his family members. If his daughter or his comes inside, obviously she'll be very senior. Ivanka Trump, brilliant mind, obviously very important to her father in the business, and perhaps if things work out in the White House or in his administration, and certainly his wife Melania Trump has the role of First Lady of the United States. That's in and of itself the most amazing, I think, role and the most senior woman. But in terms of staff, you are correct. Right now, that's the case. And also, I mean, take into account, of course, Eric, that you have a number of high-ranking women who will serve in the cabinet, Nikki Haley and Betsy DeVos and others. That's very exciting. So for me, I feel the same responsibility I think the men do on the team, which is to do what we can to articulate and to move forward the agenda that President Trump has put forward. It's very specific. It's there for all to see. It's his 100-day plan in the first few months. It's bold, and it's the one that America voted for, Eric. It includes 25 million new jobs over 10 years. It includes unleashing energy. It includes infrastructure, repealing, replacing Obamacare, immigration reform, renegotiating these trade deals so that they're more favorable to America, right, Americans and the American worker. There's so much to do. And look, there's a White House office of women and girls. I'll need to talk internally about what that means in a Trump administration. That is something that obviously that may interest me, or that my skill set would be compatible with, but it really depends what this president puts forward.
Sure. I met all 4 of the beautiful young ladies last night at a restaurant as well with you. So let me transition a little bit. You talked about the first 100 days. In the wake of some major terror attacks around the world right now, the globe is getting to be a very scary place. Can you please nail down what is President Donald Trump's policy going to be with Muslim immigration to the United States?
So as the president-elect has said many times, and as people can even see on our website, he's been very specific about what we need to do more strongly and differently than what exists now. One is more careful and extreme vetting, as he refers to it, Eric, of people in countries where, or frankly, of countries where they're known to train and harbor and indeed export terrorists and terrorism. And that, I think, would help a great deal. Also, not looking the other way. When we see what's going on, we see what's happening. We know that ISIS has also said that they plan to, quote, blend in with the Syrian refugees and other folks who are doing a mass immigration somewhere. So that's very concerning. He also just wants to crack down. He wants this to be a sovereign nation that actually has borders and respects its borders, so that we know who lives among us. We know who's coming in and not coming in. In addition to terrorism coming through our shores and over the borders, is that drugs are. It's people and it's drugs. And so there's great concern now. Every time he has said ISIS was involved in one of these attacks, either in San Bernardino or Orlando, or of course now in Nice and Brussels and Paris, and most recently this week Berlin, Germany, he's been correct. And he doesn't say it because he wants to be correct. He says it because he knows, and the American people who voted for him as Commander-in-Chief and President of the United States know, that terrorism is on the advance and that ISIS and radical Islamic terrorism must be stopped. So he is going to do things differently. If you look at the vacuum that was created after we got out of Iraq, it allowed ISIS and its predecessor groups to flourish. Right. And they're on the advance. They have not been contained. And I think the first thing you have to do, Eric, to defeat something is to name it, is be willing to name it. And he names it, and he's got a great plan. Also, he wants the allies and other countries to be involved. We believe there's strength in numbers, and we would love the help of others in helping to defeat and eradicate ISIS altogether. Right,
and sure, he's certainly willing to name it, radical Islam terror. Kellyanne, before I lose you, I only have about a minute and a half or so. Mr. Trump also named some senior communications staff team. Sean Spicer, press secretary, we talked about. Hope Hicks has been there since day one. Strategic communications. Jason Miller and Dan Scavino, director of social media. Jason Miller, director of communications. I've worked with a lot of these people. They're fantastic. They're capable. They're able. Big group. You proud of them?
Oh, I'm enormously proud of them and very proud to serve with them in the White House. That's called 4 Stars, that team. And Dan Scavino, I should mention, too, the director of social media, has been with the president-elect since day one as well. Jason Miller, obviously the comms director on the campaign. Sean Spicer, when I came on, shortly after I came on board and Steve Bannon came on board in August, we brought on Sean Spicer. It's a conversation we had with Reince Priebus on how to share Sean, and he has been fabulous up here in New York helping us with the messaging. But here's the thing. I think what's important about that entire team is that they're familiar with the president-elect and he with them. And there's a certain familiarity there. They're also proven to be able to just focus and put your head down and ignore the naysayers and the critics and the hostility that sometimes comes our way.
Before I lose you, I want to ask you this, though. How will this new team deal with, frankly, a very biased mainstream media?
Well, again, you have to name it to conquer it, and you just did. That's not true of all the media, but we recognize that there's been an unprecedented deluge of negative media to Donald Trump. But, you know, he's the president of the United States. The American people saw through that. And they know how to deal with it. They know how to navigate it. We also know how to forge positive relationships with the print and electronic press when they actually want to have complete and fair coverage. And we are all working on that on his behalf. He's working on that. He had an off-the-record briefing with media down in Mar-a-Lago on Sunday night, a cocktail party, which was really nice. And so we'll just continue in that vein.
Kellyanne, congratulations. I'm going to say thank you for joining us again.
Thank you, Eric.
Thank you. All right, coming up, sore loser liberals are plotting their next move to try to take down President Donald Trump, President-elect Donald Trump. We'll tell you what they're up to and get reaction from former Trump campaign manager Corey Lewandowski. And later, according to TMZ, Ivanka Trump and her family were harassed by an angry passenger on a flight earlier today. TMZ founder Harvey Levin will be joining us with the details. Plus, former Ambassador John Bolton is here later tonight to react to the terror attack in Germany. That and much more straight ahead on Hannity.
Entirely within his lawful power to do so. Keep in mind, though, that my strong preference has always been to legislate when I can get legislation done. So my suggestion to the president-elect is, going through the legislative process is always better, in part because it's harder to undo.
As you might imagine, many critics are crying foul as Mr. Obama has made it no secret of his love for his pen and phone. Listen to this.
I've told my administration to keep looking every single day for actions we can take without Congress.
I've got a pen and I've got a phone, and I can use that pen to sign executive orders and take executive actions and administrative actions that move the ball forward. I've got a pen to take executive actions where Congress won't. Where Congress isn't acting, I'll act on my own. I've got a pen and I've got a phone, and that's all I need.
Mark Thiessen is a former chief speechwriter for President George W. Bush and a Fox News contributor. Jessica Ehrlich is a Democratic strategist. Mark, I'll start with you first. You've got a big smile on your face. It was a beautiful montage put together by the production staff of this show. I mean, he said it, and then look what he did.
It's quite remarkable the chutzpah it takes to say what he said in that interview. And the thing about his pen and his phone is that he's still using it. I mean, the day before he gave that advice to Donald Trump in that interview, he used his pen and his phone, took executive action to permanently ban offshore drilling in hundreds of millions of acres of the Arctic Ocean and the Atlantic coast. He took a 1950s era law written 75 years ago to expressly overturn the intent of Congress and the intent of the American people in this election. He's telling Donald Trump not to use his pen and his phone. Well, guess what's going to happen? Donald Trump is going to use his pen and his phone to undo all the things that Barack Obama used his pen and his phone to impose against the will of the American people.
Jessica, after what we just saw and heard, it is hard to imagine that President Obama has a leg to stand on offering this type of advice to the president-elect.
Well, I actually disagree. I think he has every leg to stand on, because what he's saying is basically like, do as I say, not as I did, which is actually very good advice in this situation, particularly given the fact that Donald Trump is starting with the majority in the House and the Senate, which is also how President Obama started. And then things fell apart and he lost that. And not only did he lose it, but Congress worked actively against every single measure that he had and every single measure that he put forward. And Donald Trump right now is starting with not only what President Obama felt that he had in both 2008 and 2012, which is a mandate from the people. And I think President-elect Trump feels the same way, that he has a mandate from the people, that he's going forward and going to execute that. He has the majority in the Senate and the House, and now is the time to work on that. And I think, what the president is saying is, don't lose that, without specifically saying, make sure you hold on to your majority and get the legislation done and try to do as much as you can, because otherwise that is what we'll end up seeing from Donald Trump, is having to do the same actions over and over if things fall apart for him.
Mark, you make an interesting point that it makes it a lot easier to undo a lot of the things that he did do with his pen and phone when you do go around Congress.
Absolutely. I mean, and look, right now as we speak, Obama administration's officials are burning the midnight oil tonight and every night going forward between now and January 20th to try and impose as many regulations and executive actions as they can in order to hide the hands of Donald Trump. So of course he's going to use his pen and his phone to do his best to untangle that mess that they've tried to wrap him in. But it's not just executive action versus congressional action. One of Obama's signature legislative achievement is Obamacare. That's going to get repealed as well. And the reason is, it's not that he did go through Congress to pass that, but he had the House and the Senate, and he had veto-proof majorities, and so he went through and he imposed that over the objections of Republicans. If you want to be successful, if you want your legacy to last, you have to get bipartisan buy-in. You have to reach out to the other party and bring them in so that they don't come in and undo your work when they come in and get the power to do it.
And Jessica, it does make you wonder, when we saw the president, the sitting president, offer that interview and offer that advice to the president-elect, it makes you wonder, the next few years, how much is the president-elect going to hear from President Obama? Will he be pretty vocal about his actions?
Yeah, I can't really speculate on that, but I will say that, President-elect Trump has said repeatedly that President Obama has really been very open and helpful to him and been wonderful during the transition. I think that will continue. I have absolutely no idea what President Obama will do going forward, or what his role will be on a national or an international level, on a local level. I really can't speculate to that. But I think Mark makes an amazing point in that, which I agree with completely. Whatever it is, whether it be Obamacare, I think that is actually how, everything sort of fell apart for Obama, whether he'll say it or not. He ended up losing control of the House and the Senate. And that's what leads to having that, where you have to do executive orders to get what you feel the people elected you to do done. Donald Trump is not starting in that position. He's starting with a position where he's got what he feels is his mandate from the people who voted for him. Okay. He has the House and the Senate. Right. He now has the opportunity to have an incredible beginning of the next several years.
All right, Jessica, Mark, thank you.
Thanks.
New video of one woman's angry tirade going viral as some call for criminal charges. Mark Eiglarsh and Eric Guster are here on that next.
This is the Dremel Ultra Saw, the most